All right, today we have with us Keith Bodnarchuk and Steve Blower from Cosa Resources. Cosa Resources is a Canadian mineral exploration company based in Vancouver, BC, currently focused on exploration of its uranium project in northern Saskatchewan. The portfolio includes 5 uranium exploration properties, the Ursa, Helios, Orion, Castor, and Charcoal project, totaling over 100,000 hectares in the eastern Athabasca Basin. Keith and Steve, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Keith, why don't you kick it off and present yourself, your background, and the rest of your management and board of directors?
Certainly. So I have a geology background. I actually started with Denison Mines right at the beginning of the Phoenix discovery. I spent 10 years there as a project geologist working on Griffin Zone. That's where I met Steve. He was our VPX at Denison at the time. I worked on J Zone, Husky, when they found it on the Waterbury project. Then I spent some time in Africa on their Zambian projects before they ultimately sold it to GoVX. After 10 years there, I decided I wanted to pivot into the business side of things. Went and took my MBA at UBC, moved out to Vancouver, and that's where I reconnected with Steve. I was honestly looking for some sort of banking job, going to end up, maybe in the investment banking world. And Steve's like, before you do that, you got to meet this gentleman by the name of Craig Perry. And so I went and met Craig basically that next day, and they hired me as corporate development manager of ISO Energy. Great time to join that company. It was about a 30-cent stock. We obviously all built that to about $5 before we moved on in early 2021. From there, I spent the next year just kind of cutting my teeth in different types of deals through nickel and copper, obviously nickel being Archer Exploration, then copper being Visa Copper acquiring the Woodjam project. And in the background, I kept working towards building Cosa, this new uranium company, where I became CEO when it listed in March of last year. On our management team, obviously it starts at the board of directors and it starts at the top with Steve Blower, our chairman. Steve's obviously on the call here with me. I mean, he's really been a mentor to me. He'll probably get a bit bashful with me saying this, but he really has an unmatched track record of discovery in the Athabasca Basin. Whether it's been Denison, Griffin Zone, ISO Energy, Hurricane, or even just moving on to 92 Energy, where he's been an integral part of them and their GMZ zone. So he's been a great mentor of mine, and really is really the reason why I've been able to put the land package we did together here, and really the reason why we have the team we do today. Moving on, obviously we have Craig Perry. He's a strategic advisor for us. Craig is another mentor of mine. He was a co-founder of Next Gen Energy, founding CEO of ISO Energy. Him and Steve really built that into, the large company that became. He's had success outside of there, obviously being a director of Skeena, Visa Silver, and really, his office is next to ours. So he's really been a big help as far as getting Cosa off the ground and kind of building it out to what it is today. On the management team itself, we have Andy Carmichael. So he took over for Steve as VP Exploration of ISO Energy once Steve left, and he led the team through the initial resource. It's the highest grade resource in the history of the Athabasca Basin. And Andy, he's always been a fantastic geologist, and he's really fantastic manager too, as far as exploring efficiently and spending dollars in the ground. We also have Justin Rodko, who is another member of the discovery team for Hurricane at ISO Energy. He was a senior geologist for them, and he's recently left and joined us, where he's our corporate development manager. So we essentially have the entire discovery team for Hurricane currently working under Cosa's team. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, that's great. I like it when successful teams stick together, because you kind of find your rhythm out there, and you get to know each other pretty well. You're out in the field, and so it's great to see the ISO team continuing on a new project.
For sure.
All right, over to you, Steve. Why don't you introduce yourself, because you're not very public. I ask around a little bit with my geo friends, and everyone say, "Oh yeah, Steve Blower. He's a great guy. He has been around in the basin, and he's had a say in almost every discovery the last few decades in the basin."
Say, I'm not that old. Yeah, well, thank you very much. Gosh, that's nice words there. But yeah, so my background, I'm a geologist also. I started in exploration 30 some odd years ago. But I did mine geology for copper mines in BC, and I did some resource estimation work after that. But then found myself wishing I was back in exploration. So about about 17 years ago, I guess I got my first job working in the Athabasca Basin doing uranium exploration. And it was for a guy named Ted Truman, who had started a company called Pitchstone Exploration at the time. And Ted's a brilliant geologist and a super good guy. And he basically taught me everything I know about uranium exploration. And I ended up running that company, and we sold it to Fission in 2012. I went to work for Denison, as Keith said, organized the exploration there. And that was a really neat gig because I got to work with a tremendous bunch of young, energetic geologists who were super bright, and already knew what they were doing. And so I just kind of tagged along, honestly. We managed to expand the Phoenix deposit a bit, and we found the Griffin deposit, which turned into 70 million pounds of basement hosted uranium. And then I moved over to work with Craig Perry at ISO Energy, and again, and Keith was one of those guys at Denison, of course, as he already said. And so, yeah, at ISO, again, the key theme here is brilliant young geologists, I guess, because I got to work with Andy Carmichael again, who I've tried to work with at every uranium company I've been at, including Pitchstone, Denison, and then ISO, and now Cosa. And Justin Rodko, and we managed to find that Hurricane deposit. So that was a terrific time, probably the best part of my career. And lately, of course, obviously deeply involved with Cosa, and as Keith said, 92 Energy. That's a terrific bunch of people, and we really enjoy working together, and have had some success down there at Gemini. So that's about it in a nutshell.
Yep. Keith, you mentioned Craig Perry. Craig Perry is behind the Inventa Capital. You are part of that group. Maybe I've heard them describe themselves as an incubator. Can you describe a little bit, first of all, your role at Inventa, and what that means for Cosa Resources as you build the company?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm involved with Inventa Capital on the corporate development team, and Steve is too, really on the technical side of things. Inventa was founded in 2017 by Craig Perry and Michael Connert. As you said, it was really to become an incubator for these natural resource companies. And I think the model has been very helpful for, a number of companies under the umbrella. And it's what it essentially does is it can provide, seed money as you list. It can provide projects. We have a full team of accountants and IR people, and really can help these companies get a head start as they list and kind of come out into the world, and then I think you look at, companies under the umbrella, obviously Visa Silver being the flagship for that, for the Inventa Group, having the Panuco project, but other companies that have recently come to fruition would be Visa Copper, really, where they've acquired Consolidated Wood Jam. Another one, Archer, like we mentioned before, where they've acquired all the nickel assets from Walbridge. And the advantage, like using Cosa as example, is we listed in March of last year. We only had a copper exploration project at the time, and the Inventa principals and really their close associates invested $2 million into us at 25 and 35 cent share price for flow through and shares. So just having that access to capital without having the projects yet is just such a huge advantage to give you that head start and allow us to really put our heads down and build out this company. And as you continue to advance these companies, obviously they graduate a bit and become a bit more independent. But what it does allow is for us to kind of have these synergies where we do get access to capital that might not be normal places for a uranium company, right? Because there's people asking about Visa Silver and things like that. And it also kind of leads to a lot of groups bringing us projects, right? Because they see that we have an umbrella of companies, and they will just start thinking that we could maybe, acquire some of these projects and put it to a company like Cosa. And so it is a huge advantage. There's a lot of synergies there, and it just really gave us a head start, I would say, as a company.
Okay, over to you, Steve. Let's talk a little bit about the land package you put together and kind of the history, how that came together.
Sure. Okay. So, most of our ground there is in the eastern Athabasca. I guess Helios might be the one departure from that, being out on the north rim. But the eastern side is I guess where I have most of my experience. I think that the team as a whole has most of their experience. And the one of the big things in its favor is the infrastructure out there. That's currently where all of Saskatchewan's uranium is mined, and so there is good infrastructure with power lines, airstrips, roads, but more importantly, mills. Right? There are 3 uranium mills currently there, and so it just makes exploration that much easier, more efficient, and your probability of success, I think, improves because of that. So it was the natural place for us to focus as we pivoted Cosa to be a uranium exploration company. We picked up a few pieces of ground from some claim stakers, Charcoal, Castor, and then set about staking our own ground in an area that we thought was extremely prospective and underappreciated out along the Cable Bay Shear Zone, and that really is the Ursa project. This came together really quite recently for us. It was December, somewhere right around Christmas. I think we caught some people asleep and partying too much at Christmas, because some ground lapsed there that we really liked, and we managed to get it all in what is a competitive staking environment. So that was a huge success, and as Keith has said before, we kind of looked at each other and went, "Wow, I can't believe we've got 60 kilometers of the Cable Bay Shear Zone. We've got a project. We can start taking the wrapper off this thing and tell people about it." So yeah, that's really what has that's how we've come to get these land packages. Keith, anything to add there?
No, I think that's right. I think, like Steve said, we really had our heads down for the past 14, 15 months until we built a land package where we could take the cover off this company and start talking about it and get ready to do, more exploration and stuff like that. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been fun work, and we're very happy with the results of that work that we've put in.
Well, I was just going to say, we recognize that there are certain structural trends in the Athabasca Basin, especially these northeast-oriented ones, where you get deposits and mines lining up, and they're often marked by these long linear magnetic lows, the cooler colors on magnetic maps like the one you're showing there. And so anytime you can get ground along those trends, it's probably a good idea. And the Cable Bay Shear Zone is one that's been underexplored, underappreciated, probably because it's the sandstone is a little bit thicker there. So in the Athabasca Basin, the uranium is generally at the bottom of the Athabasca sandstone. So you have to drill through it to get to the sweet spot. It's a little bit thicker as you move towards the west there, and towards the Cable Bay Shear Zone. So I think that's why there has been less exploration out there. But it also means that that's probably where the next elephants are going to be found, and that's really what has got us intrigued here. You can't deny that a lot of the eastern side of the Athabasca is pretty heavily explored these days, and it's getting harder and harder to fit another McArthur River in some of these trends. But there's lots of room here at the Cable Bay Shear Zone, and we're that's really what excites us about the project.
Has there been any drilling on your property previously?
Yeah, there has, but probably only about 10 or 12 holes, I believe, in total. And that's just not even scratching the surface on something where we have 60 kilometers of the Cable Bay Shear Zone. And really interesting thing is that the few holes that have been drilled there, they have some of them have actually hit some weak uranium mineralization. And I think that that's remarkable given the paucity of drilling there. So, I think it just speaks to the potential, and we're going to get in there with some more modern geophysics. Geophysics is key in the Athabasca Basin because of that sandstone cover. You have to use it to see through to the underlying rocks. And the work that was done here in the past is old. There's a lot of much better technology these days. We think that we can image the bottom of the sandstone much better, and probably have a better chance of success. So.
Yeah, so that's the projects inside the basin. You also have more projects just outside the basin, a bit east of the Hurricane deposit and the McLean Lake Mill.
Yes, charcoal and Castor. They are also along these northeast-oriented trends, and that's really why we picked up ground there. There is no sandstone cover, so we're looking for basement-hosted mineralization only. We've flown some airborne geophysical surveys there just lately. We've redefined conductors at charcoal, and we've actually identified new conductors at Castor in a place where they weren't previously known. So I think that's been a huge success, and conductors are a commonly perspective for uranium mineralization. So, yeah.
So you said there's no sandstone. Does that mean that the potential deposit would be more shallow than inside the basin?
But yeah, I guess it means that. Yes, it's true, absolutely, because there is no sandstone cover, and it may even come to the top of the bedrock, which of course can't happen if there's sandstone cover. So yeah.
Okay, you mentioned geophysics. Have you already started geophysics work, or is that something you are still working on?
Yeah, so we've flown some airborne at charcoal and Castor. We are about to start some ZTEM surveying at Ursa, and as I said, that will really improve our understanding of the conductor package there. Those red lines that are on the map that you're showing right now are conductors from really old historical airborne surveys that just aren't typically very accurate. And I think that's reflected in the drill results that we see there. The conductors usually mark graphite in basement rocks underneath the Athabasca sandstone. And so the drill holes that were aimed at some of those conductors failed to hit very much graphite. So that means that they didn't hit their targets. So we know that there are conductors there somewhere. I think that the old technology just doesn't allow us to say exactly where they are. And so we're going to improve on that with some more modern surveying, and then get in there with some ground geophysics, and then in with the drill after.
Yeah, and what's the timeline on this geophysical surveys?
Yeah, so airborne should be starting up pretty soon, Keith, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
like
in the next few weeks.
And then that'll allow us time to get in on the ground, follow up high priority target areas that we identify with the airborne surveys, and probably do some ground EM after that, and then get in with the drill, probably starting January to March winter drilling season in the Athabasca, which is typically when most of the drilling gets done.
And the drilling, how will that be conducted? Are you far away from road access, or is this a helicopter serviced drill program?
Yeah, so we would probably access it with winter roads. That's been done in this area before, so we'll use old trails to get in there. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Keith has actually worked down the southern rim, just to the east of here, just to the west of there. Shouldn't be too difficult.
No, Cameco's worked, as recently as, a year or two ago, they went into their Centennial deposit, which is further west. They accessed winter roads and to get into that area. So it's been done a lot before. It's pretty simple from that aspect. And, in the winter, yes, you would do a skidder operated drill. And then in the summer, you would end up probably doing helicopter. if you ended up drilling in the summer.
You have some big neighbors in the chemical and Orano operations right next to you. There are only those two players really in production at the moment. Do you have an opinion on what the future will look like in the Athabasca Basin? Do you believe there are more majors coming in, or will there be more smaller players in the future? Because there will need to be more mines coming online in the next few decades in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be an interesting time here in the basin, right? Because like you said, it's always been Cameco and Orano that have controlled it for, forever as far as production. And now what you're seeing is Denison and NextGen, start to get to feasibility and level. And that's really never happened before. And so I think as you see groups like that continue to de-risk assets, that'll really entice majors or other, even potentially, like you said, oil companies, whoever, to come in, right? And we've never seen that before. And so whether like a NextGen or Denison ultimately gets through to production, I think anytime there's competition, that's a good thing in this basin. It just leads to more M&A. And so I think it's a very exciting time in the basin. I think you'll see the basin continue to come more to the forefront in the overall uranium market itself, especially as groups like Denison, continue to lower the costs of mining and things like that, and just make deposits that were considered somewhat uneconomic before become economic with this ISR approach. So I think it's very exciting. I think you'll see, a lot more M&A. Obviously, BHP is a group that is setting up more of a uranium team in Saskatoon. And I think you always see majors. I mean, you saw it in the nickel department. Just majors always are kind of first movers into these spaces. They really, really study the macro of stuff. And so to see BHP making their move now, I think just bodes well for the space, and especially for Canada. I don't know, Steve, anything to add there?
No, not really. We've seen UEC get a toehold also in the basin, right? It's not really. It's a little bit more than a toehold. They kind of firmly stepped in, actually, and so that's great. That we've got them involved too. We've got, we see Orano probably needing to come up with feed for their McLean Lake mill reasonably soon. So yeah, lots of great dynamics happening in the basin currently.
Yeah, and even adding more to UEC there, right? That just shows that companies that are even outside of the basin just realize how, you better enter into the basin if you want to become a major player in this next uranium cycle. So you might even see other uranium companies that were originally outside of the basin start making their move to get access to ground.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a trend of U.S. companies adding to their portfolio with the early stage project in the Athabasca Basin. I think that's a good combination, because they want to be perceived as American. But the American mines are typically their production is typically below $1 million, 1 million pounds per project. So if they really want to move the needle, it makes sense to have projects in Athabasca Basin as well. Regarding your shareholder base, Keith, can you tell the audience a little bit about your main shareholders and kind of the insider holdings of the company?
Sure, yeah. So the main shareholders are us. Essentially, you see the management and advisors. We own about 35% of the stock. Additional around 20% or so was just other principals at Inventa and people that aren't listed as advisors or management. Those are people that put in money when after we IPO'd and put in money at 25 cents. And so really it's very tightly held. The top shareholders are all insiders. And so, it's poised. They're long-term holders of the company, and they're really hanging on until we build this into something special. And so it's as far as the share structure goes, we have just under 44 million shares outstanding. Hardly any warrants, and so it's exciting. The cap structure is really built, to help accelerate this company.
Yeah, and I think the share structure is really dependent on your timing on entering the market, because if you had entered, 2, 3, 4 years earlier, you would have already blown out your share structure. So let's see if the market is on your side. Your share structure will be poised to really rocket your share price early.
No, and definitely timing helps with all of that. But also, I think what you've seen in the past, especially with the companies we've been involved with, that discovery, trumps all of that. Like the actual value creation for shareholders will be on the back of a discovery. And, I think we have one of the best teams that's poised to do that. So, I mean, obviously look what happened with ISO and NextGen and just look at their share prices relative to what they were. And so I think that's really what we hope to offer shareholders eventually is on the back of exploration success.
Yeah, and regarding the uranium market, do you have any predictions for the near-term future there? Because it's been a tough market lately, but there are some things happening in the background now that could really move the needle.
I mean, Steve and I have talked about this, but I think we are in the bull market for uranium, right? You see the uranium price was stable, not only stable, but actually creeping up, while other things like copper and gold have kind of dropped off. It's just really showing the strength of the uranium price. What you've seen with uranium equities is, yes, they raced out when the uranium price started to move, and they got valued quite high. But what I think happened is that people saw an overall market where they haven't had a lot of wins, and so they started selling any uranium holdings they had. But to me, what that's created is opportunity, right? You have a uranium price that's as strong as it's been in years, and you have equities that aren't currently matching that from a value standpoint. So I think this is a huge opportunity for people to get into these uranium equities before they finally catch up to what the uranium spot price is showing.
Okay, and you are listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We should have an OTC listing pretty soon, and long term, obviously, we'll look to uplist to the TSX Venture.
Yeah, that's ticker Cosa, COSA. Yeah. All right, Keith, Steve, thank you so much for joining the show, and we awesome to have you back once the drills are turning.
Sounds great. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity.